All Out Politics, news, debate and opinion from the heart of Westminster. So is the media biased against Brexit? About 70 or so, mainly Conservative MPs, certainly think so, claiming the BBC, for one, has portrayed the UK as xenophobic and regretting the vote to leave the EU, ignoring the positive economic impact since the referendum vote. Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP Peter Bone, who does think there's a bit of a problem, and Stuart Purvis, former Ofcom regulator, ITN CEO and Channel 4 board member. Welcome to you both. Peter Bone, is there a problem with the media, the way it reports?
Well, it is biased because we know, for instance, certain newspapers take different views on the issue, but the main problem is the broadcasters. And I have to say, in fairness to Sky, that you're the channel I turn to because I think you're going to get the facts. Whereas,
it's not what they tell me on Twitter, I'll tell you. But anyway.
But there is a real problem with the BBC. I think everyone accepts that Channel 4 is wholly biased in favour of the EU. And of course, most of the people who work in the industry in the broadcast are actually Remainers. That doesn't mean it affects what they do, but I think the BBC is institutionally biased.
And what particular is the problem with the BBC?
Well, I think they're institutionally biased. I think the fact is they're so much part of the establishment, so much part of how things should be. The European Union, absolutely part of the establishment. The idea we were going to come out of the European Union was absurd. And now we've come out of the European Union, they are being very... Well, hang on, why hasn't the economy collapsed? Why is unemployment at a record low? In fact, unemployment is low now as when the previous Wilson referendum. Why are we growing so well? They don't understand those things, and they say, despite Brexit, this has happened. And you're shouting at the television set. And, I mean, even what Country File had a pro-EU story in it, a few days ago. I mean, the thing is, and when you ask them, are they biased? Of course, and you can produce reports showing it, they actually say, no, we're not. That's because they're institutionally biased. OK, so
that's the charge against the BBC and Channel 4, indeed. What do you say in reply?
Well, I think if you look back to 2005, the BBC investigated itself and it came up with a report from outside experts that said there was no deliberate bias, but there was an institutional bias. And I think people sometimes get confused between impartiality and what I call conventional wisdom. And I would not dispute that for many years there was a conventional wisdom that anybody who thought Britain should leave the EU was a bit odd. I mean, David Cameron went as far as calling UKIP people, fruitcakes and loonies. And I think many people in broadcasting, as a personal opinion, would have thought it would be wrong to leave the European Union. And I think some of them have put their hands up and said that was in the back of their minds during the campaign, or they would argue that they presented it impartially. Yeah, so that's a lesson learned. Yeah. I think now I don't agree with the interpretation from those who have complained. I think broadcasters are trying to put the case clearly, but the answer is there isn't a very clear case here. We're arguing about what might happen. Journalists are asking questions about what will happen, and therefore it's a different kind of situation we're in now. I think broadcasters are doing their best in a difficult circumstance.
Well, can I just come on that point? You say, after the referendum, you accept that point, but after the referendum, they've been even had. Well, how was it that they started in the BBC talking about the fall in a pound as a currency crisis when it was hugely beneficial to the country, especially to our export?
Well, it was a 20% drop.
No, but that was hugely beneficial to... Now, don't you start becoming biased on this.
No, I'm not becoming biased.
But you could put both sides of this. The BBC didn't. Yeah. That was my point.
Well, all I'm saying is the scale of the move, by any measure, a move of that size, is significant and something that's worthy of comment.
Why not put the positive side, not just the negative side? And they just concentrate on the negative side.
I think broadcasters on that day one of, if you like, after the referendum, there was, if you like, shock at the size of the fall of the pound and of the markets. The markets have clearly recovered. The pound has not fully recovered, and that is a legitimate issue.
But recovery is not right. Let me respond to what you said. You don't want to recover. You want the pound to be at the right level.
You must accept, Mr. Bone, that there are downsides to the fall in the pound as well as upsides. And in the sense that's what... Well, otherwise, let's put the pound down further then.
No, you can't put the pound down. Well, it's a market situation, and that's why it worked. The comments were grossly pro the Remain campaign. And I'm not saying Sky did it. It's the BBC, and as you rightly say, they are institutionally biased.
No, I didn't. I said the BBC themselves have in the past been said by an independent inquiry to have an institutional mindset.
Yes,
and I'm drawing
the same thing, isn't it?
Well, no, because if you like, I mean, for instance, I was a broadcaster for 30 years. I was a regulator for 3. In those 30 years, I had personal views. I didn't happen to put them on the air. I mean, for instance, I was the editor of Channel 4 News at at the time of the miners' strike. We were not pro or anti-miners. We put forward stories that other people weren't covering. So sometimes, you misunderstand, journalists asking questions, asking reasonable questions about what is going to happen in Brexit.
Can you give you an
line.
example? In the run-up to the referendum, the media was very keen, and the BBC were very keen to have Go people on and Vote Leave people, because there was an argument about designation. And they thought that would damage the campaign. Actually, completely misfired, because when we went, whichever representative went on, we put the case for Brexit.
Well, but you're ascribing motive, saying they thought it would damage the campaign.
Yes.
Surely it was a legitimate story as to which grouping was going to get the accreditation,
Yes,
and you would report the arguments on both sides.
But that was the point. It was done. The amount of coverage you got on the BBC was disproportionate, and for a reason. And you covered it. Murnigan's programme, very good programme, and that was fine.
Sort of embarrassing.
But did you?
No, it's true. And I'm not. We know certain papers have their views. Daily Express has one view. Guardian has a. But the national broadcast. Should be completely. It should not be institutionally
Last night,
biased.
BBC One devoted an hour and a half of prime time to a debate between the different sides on Brexit. Did you have a problem with any of that?
I put the television on late last night and I got back in the house. And what was there again? Another BBC programme saying this is terrible for young people. It's the end of the world.
Well, you missed an hour and a half of BBC One prime time.
Well, let's talk about the
debates.
Okay, when the debates came along, ITV had the courage.
About last night's debate.
No, ITV had the courage to put Nigel Farage on. The BBC wouldn't consider it. I'm not entirely sure how far Sky considered it, but there was clearly, the ITV came out of that with credit, because they said, no, I'm not being told who we're going to put on by the establishment. We're going to put Nigel Farage on. That was the difference. The BBC absolutely would do nothing that, in their opinion, damaged
So just
their
because
case.
you genuinely believe there is an agenda at the BBC against Brexit?
Oh, and I think most people in the country would agree with that.
Well, I must respond to something Mr. Burns said about Channel 4. I'm not here because I'm a non-executive director. I would say that none of the people you have talked about, none of the broadcasters you have talked about in this story have been found guilty by Ofcom of any breach of the impartiality rules. And I think that's important. There is a regulator. They have got a job to do. There is a BBC Trust. They have got a job to do for a few more days. But actually, in a sense, when they test some of the points that you're making, they find that they do not actually...
Well, there are independent reports that say they are biased.
We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you both very much indeed.
Tomorrow's the big...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.